Most people in town knew Mr. Donovan as the man whose money could buy almost anything: cars, houses, businesses, even influence. But no one ever thought his heart could be touched by a little girl holding a broken violin on a cold Saturday morning. He laughed at her first. Actually laughed. He said, "If you can play something that actually moves me, kid, I'll adopt you." Everyone around him chuckled. Everyone except the girl. She simply lifted her violin, nodded once, and began to play. No one expected what happened next. Before we dive into this powerful true-to-life story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to True Story Tales. Your support helps us bring more inspiring stories to life. So hit that thumbs up, join our community, and share your thoughts below. The wind cut cold that morning, blowing dust down Willowbrook Street, a place where old shops leaned against one another like tired men waiting for a bus. And on the corner, by the bakery that always smelled of warm cinnamon bread, stood a small girl with messy hair, worn sneakers, and a violin so scratched it looked like it had survived a war. Her name was Lila, only 9 years old but with eyes too wise for her age. Every Saturday, she played outside the bakery, not for fame, not for attention, just for a few dollars to help her grandmother pay bills. And though her violin was old, her music carried a kind of broken beauty, the kind that made passers-by pause without knowing exactly why. But this Saturday, everything changed. A black luxury car rolled up to the bakery, the kind you only see in commercials. Out stepped Richard Donovan, one of the wealthiest men in the city. He was tall, sharply dressed, and always wearing a look that said the world ought to step aside when he walked. People noticed him quickly. They always did. Richard headed toward the bakery door, but then he heard that thin, trembling sound of Lila's violin. He paused, looked down at her, and smirked. "Kid," he said, waving a gloved hand. "Are you actually trying to make money with that thing?" Lila froze but didn't look away. "Yes, sir. I'm trying." Some folks nearby exchanged uneasy glances. They knew Richard well. He didn't like street performers, didn't like noise, and certainly didn't like anything he considered low-class. He narrowed his eyes at her. "Tell you what," he said loud enough for everyone to hear, "play something good, something that actually makes me feel something, and I'll adopt you." He laughed as though it were the funniest joke he'd told all week. People chuckled nervously. But Lila didn't laugh. She simply lifted her violin and said, "Okay." And before Richard could react, she placed her chin on the wooden rest, closed her eyes, and drew the bow across the strings. The sound that came out wasn't polished. It wasn't perfect. But it was raw, aching, full of something deeper than technique, something born from late nights, unpaid bills, and whispered prayers. It was a melody her grandmother had taught her, one passed down through generations, created in times when music was all her family had. The street grew still. People turned to listen. Even the bakery owner stepped outside, wiping his flour-covered hands on his apron, drawn by the haunting tune. Lila played as if every note carried a piece of her heart. The trembling of her hands didn't weaken the sound, it strengthened it. Her eyes stayed closed, but tears slipped down her cheeks. Richard Donovan, the man who once said he couldn't be moved by anything, felt something warm in his chest. Something he didn't want to admit. When Lila finished, silence hung in the air for a long moment before people burst into applause. Even the winds seemed to quiet down. Richard swallowed. His throat felt tight. But pride made him stand stiff, pretending he wasn't affected. "You rehearsed that, didn't you?" he said, trying to recover his usual confidence. But his voice cracked slightly. Lila shook her head. "No, sir. I just play what I feel." Before he could answer, an elderly woman hurried over to Lila's grandmother, Mara, her coat patched, her hands trembling from arthritis. "Lila," she whispered urgently. "You shouldn't be out here long. It's freezing." Richard turned to look at her. Really look. Something about the old woman softened his expression. She reminded him of his own mother, the woman he had lost long ago, the one who used to tell him that kindness was the only real wealth a person could give. But he had forgotten all that. Mara apologized for any inconvenience. She didn't ask for favors. She didn't ask for money. She simply took Lila's hand. "I'm sorry if she bothered you," Mara said softly. Richard felt something sink inside him, something like guilt. The kind he hadn't felt in years. "No, no," he said quickly. "She didn't bother me." His voice changed, mellowed. She plays beautifully." Mara smiled, the kind of smile that's weathered by years of struggle but still carries grace. "Music is her gift. It helps us get by." Richard looked at them, at their worn clothes and tired eyes, and for a moment he saw a world completely different from his own, a world where problems couldn't be fixed with money but with courage. "Where do you live?" he asked. Mara hesitated. "Just a few blocks away." "Do you need anything?" he asked again, his voice gentler. Mara didn't lie. "We're surviving," she said simply. "That's enough." But for Richard, it wasn't enough. Something about the girl's music had cracked his shell wide open. It wasn't just the melody, it was her determination, her bravery, the tenderness she carried despite hardship. He cleared his throat. "Let me drive you home," he offered. Mara refused politely. She had dignity, and she didn't trust easily. But Lila tugged her sleeve. "Grandma, maybe it's okay." After a long pause, Mara agreed. The drive to their tiny apartment showed Richard more than any conversation could. The stairwell lights didn't work. The hallway smelled of damp wood. Their door was patched with tape to keep out drafts. Inside, the furniture was mismatched, old, but clean. Neat. Loved. Lila showed him her practice corner, an upside-down crate as a chair and a milk crate for sheet music. She had only one real book of songs, frayed and yellowed. "Who taught you to play?" he asked. "My mom before she got sick," Lila whispered. "And Grandma helps me remember." Then Richard saw something that stopped him cold, an old photo on the wall of Lila's mother, playing a violin in a school concert. Something about her smile pulled at him. "She was so talented," Mara said softly. "Lila got her gift." Richard's voice felt unusually quiet. "What happened?" Mara sighed. "Lila's mom passed when she was 5. Since then, we managed the best we can." Richard looked around. He didn't see poverty. He saw strength. Resilience. A kind of richness that money couldn't buy. "I want to help," he said suddenly. Mara's eyes widened. "We don't accept charity." "It's not charity," he insisted. "It's appreciation." He didn't adopt the child as he had joked, because Lila already had a family who loved her deeply. But he did something better. He enrolled her in a local music academy. Bought her a brand new violin. Paid for lessons with one of the best instructors in the state. Quietly helped with rent so they could breathe a little easier. But he never bragged. Never took credit. Because kindness, real kindness, doesn't need applause. As months passed, Lila blossomed. Her music filled their apartment with hope. Her confidence grew. And every Saturday, she still played at the bakery corner, not for money, but to share beauty. People gathered to listen. Some cried. Some smiled. Some said her music was the only reason they could get through rough weeks. Richard often stood at a distance, hands in his pockets, watching silently. And every time she played, he felt a little more human. Lila eventually earned a scholarship to a prestigious music academy. Newspapers wrote about her. Crowds came to hear her perform. But she never forgot where it all began, or the man who once mocked her but ended up being changed by her kindness. Because her music didn't just move him. It healed him. Kindness doesn't always come wrapped in gentle words or perfect timing. Sometimes it begins with broken things, a worn violin, a rough past, or even a hardened heart. But when compassion enters, everything changes. Richard learned that wealth means nothing without generosity. Lila learned that her gift could lift others higher than she ever imagined. And we, listening to their story, are reminded that kindness has the power to transform strangers, mend old wounds, and inspire the world one person at a time. So may we all be a little more like Lila, brave enough to share our gifts, gentle enough to